right, so now that we've done that, let's go ahead and what we're going to need to do is let's put this on the inventory scene because we're going to need this code on this scene as well as other scenes because it's the same code base. So we want to make sure we keep this code moving when we switch to this scene, our inventory scene. So we're going to place that on there, and then we're also going to go ahead to the home screen, and we're going to make another scene, and let's just call this our main scene. This will be where our gameplay happens. And let me go ahead. I have a little image here for my main scene. And let's drag that. So this will be our main scene here. And we'll just put that image on there. So we're going to use the pause function to go to our inventory menu. And the reason why we're going to use the pause function is so that we can switch in between our inventory during game progress. So if we use the pause function, then we can go in and equip ourselves. We can pick up an item and make sure we have to drop an item and all that without interrupting the gameplay. We're just going to freeze the gameplay where it's at, and then you can come back and forth easily in between that menu and do your business in your inventory by swapping out what you want active, or if your inventory is full, you can make that decision right then in the gameplay to change out, drop an item, and pick up another one in there. So let's do a little business with that. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to make an actor, and I'm going to go ahead and let me delete that actually. Let's go ahead down. I got this little pouch. So let me just drag this up here. So this is going to be our little inventory indicator on the screen. So we're just going to make a rule, and we're going to go to inventory. And we're just going to say when touch is pressed, and we'll go down and we're going to say pause game. So we're going to look for the pause behavior, pause game. I'm not going to put an add, and we're going to go ahead and select our inventory menu as the pause game. So let me go back here. Let me switch these two out so they're in the proper order. And so this little baggie here is going to bring us to our inventory menu. So let me just go ahead. I'm going to shrink that down a little bit so it's there. And we'll go ahead, and this will be our little, when we click on this, we'll go to our inventory menu. So now let's go ahead back to our inventory here, and let's just go ahead and we'll call this Unpause. And we will go ahead, and I'm just going to use text in this. So we'll grab a display text first, and we'll type in here back to game. And you can do whatever. This can be an icon. I'm just going to do it with some text, and we'll make it blue, and we'll pick a Georgia, and then we'll go ahead and make a rule. And we'll say it's a little slow, and we'll say when actor receives event, touch is pressed, we will unpause. Let's unpause the game. And that will unpause the game and send us right back to where we were. So wherever scene, even if you had multiple scenes, when you've paused, it'll take you back to that scene and continue the progress uninterrupted. Let's go ahead back, and we will go ahead and we will place this. We'll place this down over here in the corner, and we'll spread it out something like this, and we will go ahead and just get rid of the opacity of the actor so we can just see the text, and we'll just go ahead and go to our main scene, and we'll test it out. So we'll go ahead and hit thing, and we go, and there we go. We're at our inventory, and then we just hit back to game, and it takes us back to the game. Okay, so we've got that all working good. So now let's go ahead and let's build out, let's make our first item. So we'll call this item 1. And then we're going to put some code in there that's going to be duplicatable. And we'll just have to modify a little text. And we recently found something out. I'm part of the beta testers for new Gamesalad builds. And we have an area where we can communicate with the Gamesalad staff. Now, what we learned from them recently was that I could do this item actor the way that we've conventionally done it. That is, make a self-attribute, give the item number, write all the code for all the items in here, and then just have the particular piece of code that relates to that item, self-item number fire. What the staff has told us is that that's not an efficient way to do it. Because of the way that the code scans, it'll still scan all that code that's not relevant to that prototype actor. Now, there are still cases like we did with our 1 through 12 where the code base in that all relates to what we're doing. So let me just explain this to you real quick, because this is some new information. So in our inventory slots, right, this code is all relative to these variables. In other words, all this code here is generic, and it relates to these two numbers, and it's the same for every actor. So we don't have code in here that is not being used by every single one of the copies that we have in there. But if we did an inventory item like this, a lot of people in the past would, make a rule, and, they would say, when attribute self number, do this, display this image, do that, and then do this code related to that inventory item. So like the powers it contains and the things that it does and all that. And then they would say, when self equals 1, and then they would come down and have another branch of code that says when self equals 2, do this instead of this code. So what Gamesalad has told us is to not do this. So if we're going to have a whole bunch of blocks of codes in here that you're going to have 5 or 6 blocks of code that a particular instance of this actor isn't only going to pay attention to one block, don't do that. Go ahead and make a bunch of individual actors. So we would make item 2 here. Okay. And put its block of code related to it. Item 3, item 4, item 5. Don't do a custom duplicate actor that has a bunch of code that's not going to relate to it. Gamesalad staff says you're better off having more actors and less code in the actors than having one actor with all the code in it where 2/3 of it won't relate to it unless it's assigned a specific number. So custom duplicate prototypes. So we're going to do all our items as separate ones, but the code will be the same for the most part. So we will just go ahead, because I'm going to have the item, I'm just showing you how to do your inventory stuff. So you'll have other code related to this item there, or however you build it out. So you will want to do it separately. So let's go ahead and build out our first item. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and let me grab an image for item 1 and throw it in here. And let me uncheck this. And then so what we're going to do is for our inventory menu, we're going to say this is going to be pickup item. So these are going to be the items that will be placed around our game to pick up to add to our inventory. So we're going to say when touch is pressed. And so what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to change a couple of attributes to get set up. So let's grab a couple change attributes. Change attribute. We're going to do 3 of them. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and make sure that the game slot available is 0. And what that's going to do is when we hit the game slot available, okay, to 0. And then we also we're going to change the game item picked up, because that could have a value in it, right, from the last item we picked up. So we want to change that to 0. Now what that's going to do is that's going to come in when we change game slot available and game thin. Let's go into our manager here, okay? And so when we check for an empty slot, right, we need to make sure game slot available equals 0, which was what we just did. We changed it to 0. It's going to start the scan. It's going to find the slot and then put the slot in, and it's going to put the slot available in there after we've changed it. We're going to start this code off so we know where we're putting the item when we pick it up. So it's going to change it to the slot available, okay? And then down here, what it's going to do when we change game item pick, we need to change that back to 0, because we want to make sure we're staged properly for writing the value of what we picked up in here. So we're going to change this to 0, we're going to change that to 0, and then once there's no full, okay, now it can go ahead and put that value, that game item picked up, to make sure it's the right one. Because what would happen is if we picked up an item, right, we're storing that number in the game picked up. So we need to clear that first in our code to make sure that we're not going to fire this before we get the right number in there. So we don't need to, so we're going to change that back to 0, okay, and that's going to set this condition back so this rule will fire again. So once we change it to 0, and then right away we're going to change it to a number, it's going to because rules only fire once, so we need to change a condition in order for the rule to fire again. So by changing it to 0 quickly, which is what we're doing in this item, we're just going to go ahead real quick and boom, change it. So the rule sees that it's changed, and when we go and fill it back in down here, so we're going to change game item picked up. So this is item 1, so we're going to put 1 in here, and we're going to trigger it back to 1, and when it triggers back to 1, it's going to go ahead and trigger that table right rule, because we've conditioned that rule again, because a rule only fires once. It's on the scene all the time, so it'll be in shutdown mode because that value, once it's cycled through. So in other words, the first time we pick up an item and change the item number, okay, in our manager here in the logic now, we've fired this rule. So game item picked up will be a number. It's not 0. Slot available won't be 0. Okay, game inventory full will be 0, and it's going to go ahead and write to the slot available, and it's going to write the number that we've placed in that item picked up. Now, we're not changed, so that value item picked up is going to stay. So if we selected 1, it's going to be 1, and it's going to stay there. That way this code doesn't fire anymore. The only way this code will fire anymore is if we change one of these conditions from its value away. So in other words, if the condition's not met anymore, so we change it to 0, now the rule is, it's almost like recocking a gun. We've reset the rule to fire again, because once that goes from 0 back to a number, the rule will fire again and go ahead and fire this code. That's how rules work in Gamesalad. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to refire the rule this way. So pressed, change that to 0. That's going to start our slot information. The slot information is going to get found. This is going to get changed to 0. This is going to get changed to 1. This all happens really fast. And so now, boom, 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 it's going to put the right number in there. So now that we've done that, we can go ahead and let's just copy this. Okay, and we'll call this 2. Item 2, and we'll go ahead and grab our item 2, make sure everything matches. Okay, we'll just delete this out of here, put this in here, we'll change this to 2. That's all we need to do. And let's copy this again, and we'll change this to 3. Let's go to something different. Yeah, 3 is fine, it's a book, so we'll go to 3. Item 3, put that underscore in there, and we'll go ahead and click this out, and we'll grab our item 3, and we'll change this to 3, and then we'll go ahead and we'll duplicate this again, And this is going to be item, let's make it a potion now or something. Let's make it a sword. So we'll go to item 17. And we'll grab our item 17, which is the sword. And we'll change this to 17. And we'll come back. And let's copy another one. And we'll make this, let's make this a potion. And so 27, item 27 is a potion. So let's go ahead and 27. And let's change this image to the potion. Okay, so now you see why the numbering is really important, because everything matches and we don't have to write all this redundant code and changing images and translating numbers into an image and all. This is all done for us across the code automatically just by using a numbering system. And so we can go ahead, let's make one more. And let's pick a stone, so we'll make it 23. So item 23, and we'll change this to 23, and we'll grab our item number 23. And so now you can start to see, this is what I like to say on the forums, is integrated self-expanding code by using the items and everything that we're doing here with our numbering system and our stepping up variables and all that. Just really helps us to really just make slim logic that works right and can follow each branch of code. So let's go ahead and we'll just drag our little inventory, our little pickup items in here. So we have all our items in here that we can pick up, and we've dragged we're going to make sure you've got your inventory manager on this scene as well, so when you click something, it'll start the code, and then when it jumps to the other scene, this code will still be on the screen and it'll pick up where it left off. So now we've got that set up. So one more thing that we need to do, or a couple more. So let's go ahead and let's grab our little, let's call this active item. So we'll go ahead and grab our little, go in here and put some code in here, and we'll just say that we'll grab a display text. And actually what we want to do is, we want to constrain. So we're going to constrain self image to, and then we're going to do our I, 2 dots, and then we're going to grab our variable that is item active, 2 dots, dot png. And so now that'll display whichever one we've selected to be active. Okay, and we'll put that up we'll go ahead and put this up in the top corner here. And we'll just shrink that down a little bit, and we'll put it up over here. And so if we preview it, we'll see that we don't have an item active. Okay, so we have that. And let's just go ahead and do a quick save. And so now the other thing that we want to do is we want to add, and I'm going to do this as a separate actor because I don't want this across both scenes. So I'm going to just call this my scene manager, and I can put other code in here too as well related to my game. It won't be a waste because I'm just going to do a small line of logic in here. But because I don't want this across the inventory scene. What this is going to do is, let's make a rule, and it's going to say inventory full, right? So when we're changing that inventory full, we want to alert the player, because basically, let's just do it. So let's do, and I'll explain it. Game inventory full equals 1, right, which is our first condition. that we're setting our inventory. So we scale, we ratchet up this variable inventory full in stages. So stage 1, we change it to 1. That's when we go to pick up an item and it looks and sees that the inventory is full, it right away changes the number to 1. So we know our inventory is full. So what we want to do is we want to pause the game and send the player to the inventory menu so that they know that their inventory is full and they need to replace it. So that's stage 1. Is what happens is when we do our scan, right, and this comes back as inventory full, okay, what we want to do is we want to go ahead in and send the player to the inventory and tell them that the inventory is full. So now let's go ahead to our inventory and let's do our little code for that. So let's make an actor and we'll call this full warning. So we'll make an actor, we'll call it full warning. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make a couple rules in here. So we're going to make a couple rules in here, and we're going to say, call this inventory full. And we're going to go ahead and say when attribute game inventory full equals 1, we're going to display this text. So let's go grab a display text. And we're going to, in the display text, we're going to say inventory is full. And we'll go ahead and change that to a Georgia. And we'll use a red because it's kind of like a warning there that the inventory is full. And then what we want to do, so we don't want this to stay on the air all the time. We're going to grab a timer. And you could set this to whatever, but it usually only takes about 1 second for a player to read that information when they go to the scene. So I'm just going to say when after 1 second, we want to step that variable up to the next stage. So we want to step our game.inventory full to 2. Okay? And so let's make a rule and let's call this replace an item. And so when our attribute game dot inventory full equals 2 now, okay, we're going to go ahead and display some more text, and we'll say in here select an item to replace. Okay, and so we'll change that and we'll make that our red, and we'll make that our Georgia. And so what's going to happen is now we've switched it to 2, and then it's going to say select an item to replace in there. So now remember when in our code, so let's go into our inventory slots code, right? So remember here when the inventory full equals 2, right? When we press it and it's 2. So now we've switched from use an item mode, right, up here, okay, because that only is allowed when game.inventory equals 0. So when game.inventory is full equals 2, now we're going to go ahead and take the row number of the one that we're selecting. So when we press which one we want to replace, it's going to take its row number, put it into the game slot available, change game inventory to 3, right? So now we've progressed it up. We've put the number in there that now we want to replace with, right, which works in this code. So in this code here, this is for empty slots, right? So game.inventory has to be 0. So down here, we've got the replace. So when it equals 3, right, and now we've put the item in there, now we're going to write that new item, overwrite that slot with the item that we've picked up. And you can see how this all works. It works all based on this one variable. This one variable determines how our other branches of code are going to fire and when and in what order they're going to do things. So now what we want to do is we're going to take this full warning here, and we'll drop it down. I want to drop it down better than I did last time on my demo into this little kind of blank space down here where we're not over the map. And we'll click it, and we're going to go ahead and turn that down. And we'll do a save. And what we want to do is I need the scene manager on not there, sorry, I need it on my inventory area, my game area, so that when it'll know as soon as the inventory full, it'll pause the game and send the player to the inventory so that they know they need to deal with this right now. So let's go ahead, let me do a save, and let's see if I've got everything in here. So let's go ahead and add an item to our inventory and see what happens. Yep, there it is. Back to the game. Let's go ahead and add a couple more items. And yep, there we are. Let's switch an item out. So we're active with the sword now. So let's do a couple more. And yeah, let's fill in 4 more. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now our inventory is full. So now let's go ahead and try pressing an item. And we can see inventory full. Select an item to replace. And we've replaced that. And now we can go back to our game. And now we can come back into our inventory and reactivate whatever else it is we want to use. And so there we go. We've got a complete inventory system that allows us to properly categorize all our items. It also allows us to select an item that we want to use in our game. And it also allows us to replace items or drop an item and pick it back up in our game to use as we go along. And now you can add destroy code in here if you wanted to. I just kept these on screen, but we could, this condition would be like overlap and collide or however you're doing it in your game. So if we went into just like this, well, I'll just do it in this one. So we'll say when touch is pressed, change all this, and then I could just say, and I would do a little timer just to make sure everything gets fired. So I would say after 0.3 seconds, run to completion, because it is just a momentary press. And then I could just say, destroy the actor in there. So if you did like overlap and collide, so we could go ahead and preview this. And so we see we've got nothing in our inventory. We could come back. I could press it, gets rid of it, come back. It's in the inventory. So, that's easy enough to add the rest of the code that you need to do into this system. And then you can build out from here into your game. Just what's active, and you can build out more slots to activate in there. Maybe I'll do one more video after this one, and I'll show you how to do multiple slots out of this. All right. So anyways, this is Dave. You can find me under the name Lost Oasis Games on the forums. I'll see you in the next video.